You ever wake up and wonder, how the hell did I get here? Not in a dramatic, movie, scene kind of way, but in that quiet, subtle ache that whispers, this isn't the life I meant to build. That feeling, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been drifting, and the cure for drifting is strategy. If you want to create a life that's truly yours, not just a life you end up with, you need one thing: strategic thinking. Because without it, life isn't something you're building. It becomes something that just happens to you. Think about those nights when you're lying in bed wide awake. You replay old decisions, missed chances, the one path you didn't take. You picture where you'd be if only you had made one different move. But here's the truth. You're not stuck. You're just winging it. And that's the real problem. Most people don't live intentionally. They wake up, go to work, check their phones, scroll through life, and hope that somehow, someday, everything just works out. But hoping is not a strategy, and drifting isn't living. So today, that changes. Let's break down how to use strategic thinking to stop reacting, stop drifting, and start designing a life you actually want to wake up to. Why you feel stuck? Let's get honest for a second. If your life feels like it's on autopilot, wake up, work, chores, Netflix, sleep, repeat. You're not the only one. And more importantly, it's not your fault. You were taught to memorize answers, follow rules, stay in line. But no one handed you a blueprint for thinking strategically about your life. They didn't teach you how to zoom out, get quiet, and ask, what's really going on here? What do I actually want? What would move me closer to that? Even just one small step. That moment, where you pause instead of react. That's everything. Because the second you start thinking like a strategist, something powerful happens. You stop getting pulled in 1,000 directions. You begin pulling yourself in the direction that matters. You stop chasing distractions. You start chasing results. And that is when things begin to change. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because your thinking got sharper. Here's your first real tool in the strategic thinking toolkit. Ask yourself, what would future me thank me for? Sounds simple. It isn't. That one question pulls you out of survival mode and into long-term thinking. It zooms you out. It rewires how you make decisions. You're exhausted. The couch looks tempting. You want to skip the gym. But what would future you say? You're about to reply to a text you swore you'd never respond to again. But what would future you respect? It's 1:30 a.m. and you're hovering over next episode. But what would 700 a.m. you wish you had done? The moment you start asking this consistently, you unlock a rare superpower, delayed gratification with direction. This isn't about being perfect. It's about gradually shifting the weight of your choices from what feels good now to what builds the life I actually want. And here's where most people screw it up. They write goals and wait for magic. I want to get fit. I want to save money. I want to travel more. Cool. But goals without systems. They're just wishes with a deadline. Strategic thinkers don't obsess over outcomes. They obsess over the process. They don't just say, I want to get fit. They build a system: wake up at 6:30 a.m., work out 3 times a week, meal prep every Sunday, screens off by 9 p.m., lights out by 10:30. That system is a machine, and machines don't need motivation. They run. And the best part, systems eliminate decision fatigue. You don't waste energy debating. You just run the play. But there's one more piece of the puzzle, one most people never think about: subtraction. Strategic thinking isn't just about adding better habits. It's about removing the stuff that's silently ruining your momentum. Think of your time and energy like a garden. It doesn't matter how many good seeds you plant if the weeds are choking everything. We all have weeds. The toxic friend who drains you. The endless scroll that eats your mornings. The habits you defend even though they sabotage you. Start pruning. Your strategy isn't complete until you start letting go. It doesn't matter how much you water it. If the weeds are still in the soil, nothing grows. So take a look at your life and be brutally honest. What's quietly draining you? The people who always need something but never give anything back. The habits that hijack your focus. The fake urgencies that make you feel productive but leave you exactly where you started. Start subtracting. Delete the apps you scroll without even thinking. Limit conversations that go in circles. Cut the commitments that don't align with your direction. Every time you say no, you're actually saying a strategic yes to something that matters more. And here's a truth not enough people talk about: you can't build a long-term life with short-term people. If you're trying to grow, to break out of cycles, to level up. You need to audit your circle. Strategic thinkers surround themselves with people who challenge their comfort zone, respect their vision, aren't afraid to say, let's build, instead of, let's chill. This isn't about cutting people off coldly. It's about choosing alignment over nostalgia. The people around you will either elevate your momentum or anchor you to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. Choose your circle like your future depends on it, because it does. Now, let's address one of the biggest mistakes people make with strategy. They don't plan for the storm. They set a goal, feel excited, take action, and then life hits, and they crumble. Strategic thinkers don't just prepare for success, they prepare for resistance. If your plan only works when you feel motivated and everything goes smoothly, that's not a plan. That's a fantasy. Want to build better habits? Cool. What happens on the day you feel drained? When you miss a workout? When you fall off track? Build the fallback plan before the fall. Want to save more money? Awesome. But what's your move when a surprise expense comes up? When your friends pressure you to spend like you're in a different tax bracket? Anticipation is power. It keeps you from getting knocked off course by predictable setbacks. Because when you've already thought through the detour, the roadblock doesn't stop you. You pivot. You adapt. You keep building. The point isn't to avoid problems. It's to stop being surprised by them. Preparation turns chaos into curveballs. And guess what? You can hit a curveball if you know it's coming. Here's a practice that could genuinely save your energy, your decisions, and your peace. Zoom out. Always. Whenever life feels like a storm, when your to-do list becomes a guilt list, when you feel stuck in the same pattern, or when everything suddenly feels urgent, pause. Step back. Most people ask, what do I feel like doing right now? But that question traps you in short-term thinking. It keeps you reactive, not strategic. Instead, ask, what's the big picture I'm building toward? That one shift resets everything. Overthinking a mistake. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? That question pulls you out of panic and puts you back in power. Because not everything deserves your energy. Not every moment requires a meltdown. When you zoom out, you don't just get perspective. You reclaim direction. You stop reacting like every inconvenience is a catastrophe. You reconnect to your strategy. You remember what actually matters. And most importantly, you start moving with purpose, not panic. Here's the part that brings it all together. Strategic thinking is not about having the full map. It's about choosing a direction and trusting the next step. You won't always know how it ends. You don't need to, because clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Strategic thinkers aren't fortune tellers. They're pattern spotters. They reflect, adapt, and pivot. They make a move, learn something new, and adjust. That's the key. Don't aim for perfection. Aim for progress, with purpose. They don't need to see the whole staircase, just the next step. That's enough to keep moving forward, because the life you want, it isn't random, it's built. So the next time you catch yourself floating through another day, reacting instead of choosing, surviving instead of building, pause. Ask better questions. Zoom out. Act with intention. Because the life you want, it's not something you stumble upon. It's something you create, one smart, strategic decision at a time. Start thinking long-term. Start cutting what doesn't serve you. Start surrounding yourself with people who aren't just talking about winning. They're building toward it. You don't need permission. You don't need a sign. You need strategy. You've got this. Now go. Build the life you want.